Last night I found out I had a brother that I didn't know about, and my head is... I just happened to see an advert on social media for Ancestry DNA kits. My husband said, "Why don't I buy you one? It'd be really fun." You get this message that pops up that says, "Your results are in." I opened this message and it was a really long message. And he gets so far down and says, "It seems you are my sister and your dad is my dad."
Wow.
Could have just fallen off the chair. The man that sent me a message is your son, Dad. You've got another son you didn't know about.
And how old's your dad?
88. They tried to persuade me at one point that it was a scam.
Your information is out there to be exposed. Does that not make you feel a little bit vulnerable?
Before my grandma died, she told my dad and some of his brothers that she'd had 22 children. So my dad was one of 22.
That's
And
incredible.
it's a lot, isn't it? I mean, even for the time, most of the brothers and sisters were either brought up in care or adopted or sent all over the place. So my dad didn't discover that he'd got any sisters until he was about 17 because they'd been placed elsewhere in care and the boys had gone a different direction. So there was all this background, and we just kind of wondered, first of all, how much of us was, we was Irish in terms of our DNA, because we knew that a lot of these ancestors were Irish. And partly we wondered if any of these relatives of my dad's, whether his generation or after that, would turn up.
You've obviously had this question mark as to your Irish roots, but actually taking the step to have your DNA tested,
Mm,
that's a big, for
mm.
me, that's a big thing, right? How did you actually make the decision?
I just happened to see an advert on social media for Ancestry DNA kits, and I thought, oh, that would be a fabulous gift for somebody. So I bought a friend one initially, and then I thought, oh, knowing my dad's background, why don't I buy him one? And then my mum wanted one. My husband said, "Why don't I buy you one? It'd be really fun. It'd be nice to see how much of me's Irish." You just order a pack, which is a little box, and I think you spit into the tube, if I remember rightly. Just post it off, and I think might took about 6 weeks. You get this message that pops up that says, "Your results are in. Go check." So it said mine was, I think actually it might have been 55% Irish, which was no great surprise, but it was very interesting. So we said, "Oh, that's very nice, isn't it?" Shared it on our social medias respectively, showed us friends, and that was that. What a lovely gift, and just put it to one side, and that was that.
And then what happens?
Not an awful lot for 4 years. And I'm
Right.
just sat on the couch whilst my husband's cooking, and I saw a message ping up on the app, and I just nonchalantly flicked it up to look at it, because you do get messages from people sometimes asking you, because you can put a family tree on there as well. You can build your family tree. There's all sorts you can do on this app. Sometimes you do get messages from people saying, "Is this person in your family tree the same as my person?" That kind of thing.
Right.
And I just assumed it was one of them. I opened this message and it was a really long message, and I thought, oh my goodness, what nut has this sent me a message on Ancestry? So I proceeded to read down it, and he was just telling me all about himself, his family, the fact that he lived in the far north of Scotland, and what he did for a living. And I thought, what is this man telling me all of this for? And he gets so far down and says, "You may have guessed where this is going." I hadn't. You may have guessed where this is going, but my DNA match has come back today, and it seems you are my sister and your dad is my dad. I,
Wow.
I could have just fallen off the chair. I could barely speak, and I thought I must have misread that. And I read it all again, unfortunately, which took ages with it being such a long message. And I just kept staring at it, and like, I just couldn't think of a single thing to say. It was such a shock, because I've been brought up with one brother, one sister, mum, dad, always been married. There's no, you know, broken marriage, broken family. There's none of that. So we've just been, for 50 odd years, I'm 53, just one little group, one little family. So it wasn't the sort of thing I was expecting at all.
If you are enjoying Real Women's Stories and this episode, why not hit the like button and follow and subscribe so you never miss another episode?
So I took the decision I'd best ring my brother and sister, the ones I already knew about, that is. And they were very quiet whilst I was explaining this. And there was a long silence at the end of it before eventually my sister said, "Right." So I said, "Well, I don't know what you think about that." And they both sort of said, "Well, as parents married in the 30s, so it wasn't a large stretch that, if they'd had relationships and flings and whatever before that, that there would be someone else." They tried to persuade me at one point that it was a scam, that he was a scammer, which,
Okay.
and I thought, oh, I'd not thought about that because he'd given me a phone number and an email and
Mhm.
said, please do contact me. But the one thing I'd love to see, if it's okay, is a photograph of my dad, even if you don't want to be in touch. And it was that point I realised that I was going to have to go and speak to my 87 and 88-year-old parents.
Yeah.
Within 2 hours, I had gone to their house. Now, I rang them up and I think I panicked them a bit because they looked a bit ashen when I walked in. I explained it was urgent and I needed to speak to them. So, what I did was I ended up saying, look, nobody's pregnant, nobody's in trouble, nobody's sick, nobody's dying before I start this because I can see you're worried. And I said, I don't really know how to say this to you, except for to say we've had a match back on Ancestry, and it shows that the man that sent me a message is your son, Dad. You've got another son you didn't know
Oh.
about. And he just went like that. He couldn't, the same as me, couldn't
And
speak.
how old's your dad?
88.
88.
Mm,
I mean, I can't imagine being told at
mm,
88 that, for example, my husband has fathered a child
mm,
and then there's another child in the mix.
yeah.
Like, in all of this, how are you feeling?
I had no anger or anything. Well, it helped that my new brother predates my parents' marriage, so that helps. I mean, had it been an affair situation, I don't know how I'd have felt about that. So I wasn't. I was numb when I was speaking to my
Mm.
parents. I was very nervous to see how they were going to be because I didn't want to give my dad a heart attack, or I didn't know because my dad's very anxious person. My mother is very laid back. I knew she wouldn't give a hoot about it. She'd be fine, which was true. But I thought my dad might have a little bit of a meltdown. So I was really worried about bursting into the room at their age and giving my dad this information.
Mm.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a
It's a
lot,
lot.
ain't it? So he was just dumbfounded. I mean, he accepted what I said throughout, the conversation, albeit he did a couple of times say, It can't be right, surely." I mean, he didn't disbelieve anybody, but
Yeah.
he was questioning, could there have been a mistake? So it was a shock. And apparently, my dad stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning trying to remember girlfriends from the 1960s and
Oh,
write a list. He was saying,
wow.
I'm 88. I can't remember.
That's
So we gave him an
crazy.
we gave him a name of my new brother's mum, and he said, I just don't remember the name. He said, that's awful. So he was embarrassed then.
If you would like to join the conversation, why not leave a comment below? Would you get your DNA tested? Would you go to an Ancestry website and fill in your details? So leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm just trying to think if it was my dad or if it
Mm,
was my husband or if it was somebody else. Like, obviously from what you're saying that your dad's taking on board and he trusted you and you've got a very good relationship with
mm,
him.
yeah.
But do you not think about how this affects people that aren't in the same boat as you? That, you
Mm,
know, what you know, I guess it could crumble a family, right? If it wasn't wanted, because you were doing the test, not them. And actually,
mm,
yes, it is your sibling, but it's his son.
mm.
Would you have chosen to maybe lived with that thought in your head, or sorry, lived with the knowledge but not told him?
I
If
was
if
never ever going to do that. There wasn't even a second when I thought that, because me personally, I will always go with honesty, even if it causes me problems. Because I always think, the truth always comes out if there's a secret. Um, and even if it gets me into trouble, I'll always tell the truth and deal with the consequences, which I think's better than sitting and worrying about something or sitting on a secret. That for me, particularly because I know my parents are kind people and quite open. Um, if you've got a relationship with a family member where it's a difficult relationship, or that person could perhaps be unpredictable or has a temper maybe, or don't it's somebody that doesn't always react well to things, you you would know that relationship you got with that person better than anyone, and you would have to judge it on an individual basis. But I definitely have always had a strong feeling you can't go wrong with the truth.
so, if I'm here sitting here thinking, do I, you know, it interests me, right?
Mm,
You've got me thinking. What if I did a DNA test? Do I do it? What effect could it have on my family?
mm,
Because I think we've got to think really carefully about this. And I know for you, it was a very, yeah, I'll just do it. It's a bit of fun.
mm,
But is it a bit of fun, really? Because you know, I worry. I worry. You know,
mm,
I've had a very challenging time with my family, and do my family need to uncover any cobwebs and open Pandora's box, and
mm,
suddenly relatives come out that you didn't know existed, and maybe there are deep dark secrets lying there that
mm,
people didn't know that. I mean, I mentioned this to a friend of mine. Somebody did it and found out that her dad wasn't her real dad.
mm.
I
I've
mean,
heard loads of stories.
how do you live with that? If I
Mm,
found out that, I mean, I look the image of my dad, so I know he's mine and I'm his daughter. But if
mm,
I had found out that my dad wasn't my real dad and that somebody else was, that my mum had had obviously an affair with someone,
mm,
never told anyone, I mean, that would completely destroy me. And
mm.
I just think, oh, I'm just not, you know, is this a good thing?
I come across quite a lot of people that's happened to, because I did a TikTok about it, and like lots and lots of people watched it, and I got so much feedback, so much, and a lot of private messages, messaged me personally,
Mm,
who said this is exactly what happened to me. They found out the dad wasn't their dad, or a brother or a sister, but mostly fathers that they were talking about. And a lot found at first that they felt really horrible about it, but they wanted to know who their real dad was.
mm,
They wanted
mm.
to know who the real dad was. And it was mostly because they found relatives they didn't know they had, because they did find another parent, that they discovered that the one they have wasn't
Yeah.
theirs. So it gave them an opportunity, not lost a relative. It also gave them one. So that was the view that most took, that they had the right to know who the real dad was. DNA test surprise part 2 video. I said I'd keep you updated. So it's a week to the day since we found out that that I found out I've got a brother. I can see me in him and my brother and sister. I'm getting confused about how many brothers and sisters I've got already. We've set up a WhatsApp group and included him now. And the poor lad, he didn't have any family really much before. No big family anyway. So he suddenly found himself with about 150 cousins, about 20 odd, about 20 uncles and aunties. We'll be meeting up when he gets back off holiday. When we all meet, I'm thinking it's going to be like some off Long Lost Families. I have an update, and it's a good one. He came to see me, yeah, and it was really nice. It was weird. He felt like my brother when I was with him. My dad is now so happy. He's so happy. He says things like, my dad's been to stay with them, my mum and dad. They flew up
Mm,
there to go stay with them for a couple of weeks. And he talks about, oh, he's my son, and thank goodness I got a chance to meet my son whilst I was still alive. They spent their first Father's Day together, and my brother got a chance to give him a Father's Day card for the first time. And they've got some lovely photos together. And it's just like really, really special, really special.
mm.
So they would have never, and we've got a good relationship as well. So none of this would have been possible without that test, as much as it started as something quite light-hearted. It's been
Yeah.
life-changing.
Would you advise somebody? So if somebody was saying to you and they'd seen you on TikTok and said, "Listen, I'm thinking about having my DNA tested, but I'm just worried that there may be some hidden secrets out there." What would you
Mm.
say to that person before they did the test? Because you didn't have time to think about it, you just did it. But if you
Yeah.
had to go back, if you had
Mm,
to go back and talk to yourself about it,
mm.
and obviously opening up Pandora's box and knowing now what you know, what would you say to somebody? What advice would you give them?
I've spoken to a couple of friends who thought about it, and I've just said, do it. Do it. It's just been the most wonderful thing in my life, and I know you'd love it if something interesting came up. But I know it would depend on the individual. If they thought that secrets that came out, there was a really good chance that it could be something so shocking it could split up a family. At that point, you have to think to yourself, okay, would I do this? Would I not do it? Do I do it and keep it to myself, what I discover?
I'm still on the fence though. Like, if you encourage me to do it? Like, what
Oh,
would
absolutely.
you think I should do it?
Absolutely. Because I think, in some respects, I think most people should say to themselves, what is the worst that could happen here? And what's the best that could happen? And how might that impact you and those around you? I mean, I suppose in my case, somebody might have come up that had been a result as an affair. That would have been absolutely terrible. Um, but I know in my mum's case, and I knew it would be, her reaction was, in fact, she said, I don't care. It was before we were married. I don't care at all. And she was sat there saying that to my dad
Mm,
on the night I told them. So I knew that was always going to be a reaction. So I suppose it's different if you don't know somebody, it will just be really fine with whatever the results are. But I personally, overall, am of the view, do it, find out, find the information out, because now I'm in a situation where I aren't going to get to know my brother until I'm in my 50s. And it's clear we've got a good bond already. I've been to stay with him, and I'm going to stay with him again next week. And
no.
the chances are we're probably going to go and live up there near him.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're
I mean,
making
that's
some
life
plans.
changing. That's
Yeah.
life changing.
All that from an advert on social media.
But then don't you think it's weird? Don't you feel a bit exposed that your information is on this database? Big Brother's looking at us the whole
Mm,
time. Alexa listens to everything we say, Facebook listens to everything we
mm,
say. Isn't that just the last piece of you that you're putting out there so that Big Brother you're sitting in this system of 27, how many,
mm.
27
27 million, I think it was.
million
Yeah.
people, and
Mm,
you're in this pool of
mm.
people, and your information is out there to be exposed. Does that not make you feel a little bit vulnerable?
Not so much because I mean, when you think about it, you've just said it. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of the different, they've all got information about you. Your phones, unless you stop it, listen to you. Or we've all seen these things that, an advert that pops up on social media for something you were just talking about or even thinking about. And, you know, your information's out there, your bank details, just about everything about you. There's not really anything about my DNA that's going to give anybody any insight to anything about me that, you know, they've not got by being able to see my spending habits or, you know, all the other things that they can see. It's the way the world's going. It doesn't really worry me. And if the,
Mm.
I think if anybody was spying on me anyway, I've always said they'd be really bored. They're all
Well, they're
coming
not
to
bored
look.
anymore, though, are they?
Well,
Because
no,
you've
not
got this
now.
really exciting, interesting life, and you've just found a sibling that you never knew existed,
Mm,
and you're 53 years old.
mm.
Wow. How
I'm
does it
just
make
sad I've
you
missed
feel?
out. I've
Yeah, I was
missed
going to
out
say.
because me and my sister have both said this. I've got a photograph of me and my dad when we were very, very young in a photo booth. It's black and white, it's that old. And I was 5 on it, and he'd be uh, late 30s at the time. And I just keep looking at this photo and thinking, my brother should have been there. I feel like he
Oh.
was missing. And I look at photos now, and they just don't look right. It's kind of changed how I see my childhood photos. And I feel upset for me that my big brother wasn't around when I was younger, because I always thought I was the oldest. And that's been a really strange thing to get my head round, because I'm actually not the oldest, as it turns out. But
Mm.
it's changed. I feel like I've missed out. And we all
The
do. We all feel like we've missed out. And we're just glad we have found out at least, even if it was late.
You really embrace this
Mm,
man who you didn't know for 53 years in
mm.
your life. But I'm guessing there was a real kind of emotional roller coaster that you went. What's been the toughest emotion, and what time was like? What talk me through how you felt and what the situation was? What was going on in your head at that time?
You would think it was the initial shock that was the low, wouldn't you? Um, but for the large part, in the first couple of weeks, I was numb. I just couldn't decide what I thought about it. So I didn't feel particularly down. There were no downsides of it, and because everybody reacted well, that there was fine. I think the downside of it is realizing the loss that you've had, because we feel, I know me and my brother and sister that I already had felt an amount of guilt that we were still with my dad,
Mm,
and that for my other brother that he wasn't. Um, but and I expected that. You would expect that. That's not strange. But the worst part about it has been the sense of loss. Like, you lost your brother for a long time and never
mm,
got a chance to have the relationship. And that's been by far the biggest low. And I can I could cry thinking about it sat here right now. I feel like I miss him from before, if that's not a strange way of putting it. And it's kind of opened an area of your heart that you don't know is there. I found that quite hurtful, that he's not been with us, and I've got no one to address that anger to. My dad didn't
mm,
know, and the mother that he did know partially about has passed away now. The
right.
brother, he had no fault in it, so you've got no one to address that anger and upset to, and you've just got to sort of work through that to me, and I know my brother and sister have described the same, is the biggest down about it all.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
loss of not having had him.
Wow. Wow. That's it's interesting because I never would have thought about it in that way. But I
Mm,
guess unless you've actually been through the experience that you've been through,
mm,
I wouldn't have thought it. I thought initially it would be like I'd be angry not knowing this person, but the fact that they hadn't been
mm,
in my life,
mm,
that's a really that's a really special but interesting kind of take on it, and it's really got me thinking as well. Really got me
mm.
thinking. That must be quite tough. Must be quite tough for you.
Yeah. I wish we'd done.
Mhm.
I wish we'd found out 10, 20, 30 years before. I wish we'd never had
Yeah,
to do this, but we're all wishing we'd known when we're
yeah,
younger, particularly my dad, because he feels like he's missed out on his son. And we're also annoyed that he's not been there. He
mm,
says his upbringing, albeit wasn't the best start, wasn't too bad. I don't know if he's saying that in part to make us feel better because
yeah,
he knows there's some guilt, or there's bound to be, I think, or if he genuinely had a nice time. But he also says he didn't feel like he missed out as a child. However, now we've all visited and come back home to Yorkshire, he said he misses having us around a lot and that if that's
oh,
hurted him. So it's kind of set all these emotions going that we didn't even,
yeah,
we didn't even know were there really. So yeah,
yeah,
it hurts me that he wasn't there. And that's
oh,
the thing I would never have known had I
yeah,
not done the test. But that's
yeah.
by far been the biggest low.
You were approached before to talk about it. Why now? Why now do you want to talk about it?
So it's a little bit of time, sometimes past now. And when I quite like sharing things, like I'll do a TikTok video or whatever. I feel it gets it off your chest, and sometimes you get other people's opinions. And the very day after I got the message from my brother, I I sat there and I did this TikTok video and I shared it and I saved it and I thought I'm not publishing it yet. I just put it in my drafts until I felt okay with it. And then a bit nearer the time, out it went. And it was really comforting in a way listening to people's responses. But I did get an approach by a journalist who said, right, we want to do this. We're very interesting story. Can we do this and put it to the newspapers? And I was like, ooh, uh, and it wasn't very long afterwards. And I was a
Okay.
little bit thrown and still a bit. Um, so I spoke to my family and they were like, oh, no, 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 no. We're only just getting his heads around this. Can you just say thank you very much, but no, thank you, which I did. And then the question came up again this week. So I said, it's it's important that other people who are in this situation get something, can see other people in the same boat as them. In fact, I asked my brother, and I thought he was going to say, no, no, don't be going on any podcast and talking about that. And the first thing he said were, well, why not help somebody else that's in the same situation to hear somebody else who's been through the same thing?
That's brilliant. Thank you. And that's what Real Women's Stories is about. It's
Mm,
about sharing our stories
mm,
because there may well be somebody else in my community, in this
mm,
community, that is either thinking about doing a DNA test to find out maybe more about their relatives, more about their
mm,
family, or indeed if they feel that there is some kind of secret that's been kept in the family and they want to find out,
mm,
at least they can listen to this and feel reassured that yes, things can happen, but obviously there can be good outcomes, and it's
mm.
how you process the
How you deal
information. It's
with it,
about
yeah.
how you deal with it. And I think you have to maybe think about the choices that you're going to make once you find out the information.
Mm,
Am I strong enough to keep this to myself? Do I want to share it?
mm,
If I'm going to
yeah.
share it, how am I going to approach those people that are affected by it? And I guess they now have your details, Jeanette, that if they're concerned
Yeah,
and maybe you can help
yeah,
them, maybe you can
yeah.
speak to them.